Thank you very much, Dr. Widato, for that wonderful and very generous introduction. And thank you to all the organizers for inviting me to be this wonderful city of Gadjah. And a very good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody's response. Okay. So today I would like to talk a little bit about zoonotic diseases in our region, in Southeast Asia, and what global implications these diseases would have. So before I begin, can I just have a raise of hands? How many of you are in the animal-related background? Animal science, veterinary, zoology? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 saya? Okay, tak apa. So it's only 6, but it's okay. So I think I will try to explain as much as I can. Zoonotic diseases. What do I mean by zoonotic diseases? Zoonotic diseases are infections which can transmit from animals to humans. Okay? So any animal diseases which can be transmitted to humans are known as zoonosis. Okay? Right. So as we know, our area, Southeast Asia, is a very rich and very diverse area with a lot of plants, a lot of fauna and flora, and we've got one of the oldest tropical rainforests in the world. And this contributes to the high biodiversity of our plants and animals. Now, if you look at this very simple map, you will see that there are many biodiversity hotspots, of which Southeast Asia is very rich in biodiversity. In fact, one of the most highly diverse spots in the world. But interestingly, Southeast Asia is also a region with the highest distribution of threatened mammals. Okay? So although we've got a high diversity of animals, we are apparently not really taking care of our animals very well because they're all becoming threatened. So what are the threats that are faced by our animals? Habitat loss and habitat degradation are very important threats throughout Southeast Asia, in Malaysia especially, and I also know in Indonesia as well, and in Indo-Chinese countries. Hunting and trapping is very rampant. A lot of our wildlife are being hunted and trapped at a rate which is not sustainable. And we've also got roadkills. Quite a number of animals die in roadkills. I was just talking to Alan and he says that a lot of koalas and kangaroos get killed on roads as well. So Sorry? Only in Australia, yeah. Okay. So poaching and commercial hunting is also a big problem. There's a lot of illegal trade in wild animals, I'm sure you know, right? If you go to the markets in Southeast Asia, you will find all kinds of animals in the market, body parts of animals, you know. In Malaysia, you can even get tigers' penises being sold in the markets as well, which is quite interesting. And bear parts, bear paw is a delicacy. A lot of people like to eat the bear paw because it's very soft and delicious. So if you look at this, this very simple graph, you will see that habitat loss is the major contributing factor to the loss of biodiversity throughout the world, and especially so in Southeast Asia. So if we talk about habitat loss, how does this correlate with the transmission of zoonotic infections? It's very simple. Animals are being displaced from their natural habitat. When forest is destroyed, animals are forced into urban areas. They come into the urban settings, and what do? They start to reproduce in the urban settings. There's a lot of food. They rummage the garbage areas. They can find shelter for breeding, and they will bring with them the disease. So from the forest, they come out into the towns, and they bring with them the vectors and the disease. And this actually narrows the interface between the animals, the wild animals and humans, and that allows very easy and very quick disease transmission. Right? Okay, this is a very simple diagram about transmission of disease. We've got humans here, right at the bottom here, and domestic animals, peri-domestic animals, and wildlife. So the peri-domestic animals are the ones which actually act as a bridge, which will transmit infections from the wild animals to humans and also to domestic animals like livestock. Okay, and there are many ways in which there are many ways in which diseases can be transmitted. For those of you who are not very familiar, you've of course got the aerosols. When you sneeze, You can transmit infections. Oral, when you eat infected food or drink infected water, you can get infection as well. Direct contact with animals, through formites. Formites are like instruments or vehicles, and also through vectors. Now the vector component is very important, especially mosquitoes, flies. They transmit a lot of zoonotic infections to humans. And when we talk about zoonotic infections, there are four principal components which we like to address: the vector, the host, the environment, and the agent. These are all factors which will influence the transmission of the zoonotic disease. Right, so it is very interesting because over 60% of human infections are due to emerging infectious disease, and of this, almost 72% are zoonotic. So when you talk about human diseases nowadays, you have to talk about zoonotic infections from wildlife, because over 72% of the human diseases originate from wild animals, and these are emerging infections. So this is another map showing you the global hotspots for emerging infections in the world. And as you can see, South Asia and Southeast Asia in particular is really a hotspot for emerging infections. And I've quickly listed out the groups of animals which transmit various types of infections. We've got the virus, the bacteria, the rickettsia, the protozoa, and things like that. And as you can see, the rodents and the primates, ticus and the monyet are the primary agents for zoonotic infections, and also the bats, the klawa. Is it called klawa here as well in Indonesia? Klawa, yeah. So these are the animals which are the main reservoirs and the main animals which transmit infections to humans. Right, so I will focus only on parasitic diseases. I will not talk about viruses, I will not talk about bacteria or rickettsia, just parasitic diseases. And as you can see, there are so many different parasitic diseases which are transmitted by animals to humans, okay? You've got malaria, sarcocystis, blastocystis, cryptosporidiosis, giardiasis, amoebiasis, the whole lot. Only thing that's missing is testis. Right. So you've got all kinds of hosts as well, wildlife as well as domestic animals, which can transmit this infection to humans. I will only focus on two important ones, which is zoonotic malaria and zoonotic sarcocystis, because it's very common in Southeast Asia. Now, for zoonotic malaria, Plasmodium knowlesi and Plasmodium cynomolgi are two known zoonotic infections which are transmitted from monkeys to humans. Okay, it is also known as the monkey malaria. So monkey kera ekor panjang, kenal kan? So kera ekor panjang is all over the place, isn't it? Di merata tempat. So they are the important reservoirs for zoonotic malaria to humans. Now, just some very quick historical background. The disease was found a long time ago in Southeast Asia. Interestingly, Plasmodium knowlesi, which is the parasite causing zoonotic malaria, was previously used to treat neurosyphilis. You know, neurosyphilis is a human disease caused by the treponema bacteria. So what they did was, anybody who had this neurosyphilis, they will inject you with Plasmodium knowlesi. The Plasmodium will cause a very high fever in your body, and that high fever will kill the bacteria. And once the bacteria is dead, then they can easily treat the malaria infection. So in those days, before penicillin was invented, they used zoonotic malaria to treat neurosyphilis. Very interesting, right? And now, zoonotic knowlesi malaria is the most common form of human malaria in Malaysia and the most deadly. Okay, so previously we talked about Plasmodium falciparum, vivax, malariae, and all that. But now we know that the primate malaria is the most common and most deadly in Southeast Asia. Right? So as you can see from this simple map, we have found zoonotic malaria in many places in Southeast Asia. But if you look closely, you can see that Indonesia is free from zoonotic malaria. Is it true? I probably don't think so. It's just that nobody is looking for it. Okay? I don't think that many people in Indonesia are looking for zoonotic malaria. Everybody is focusing on the human malaria, falciparum, and vivax. Okay? But we're trying to initiate a Southeast Asian program where all the Southeast Asian countries will participate, screen the monkeys to detect this zoonotic malaria in the region. Okay? And as you can see, Malaysia is a hotspot for zoonotic malaria, Peninsular Malaysia as well as Sarawak and Sabah in Borneo. Okay? So we all talk about oil palm, we all talk about crops and all that, but do you know what is our biggest export from Southeast Asia to the rest of the world? Zoonotic malaria. Okay, we have exported zoonotic malaria to various parts of Europe. Okay, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Central Europe. We've even exported to America as well. We've got a big company in America importing our malaria. And also to Australia. We just recently opened a branch in Australia as well, where we're exporting zoonotic malaria. Okay? So many travelers, many tourists who come to Southeast Asia. What's the tariff? Yeah. Many tourists come to Southeast Asia and they get zoonotic malaria. Okay? So that is why we know that this zoonotic infection is of global consequence, right? Okay, Plasmodium knowledii, as I mentioned, is the most common primate zoonosis in Southeast Asia, very widely distributed, and the main reservoirs are the monkeys, okay, the leaf monkeys and the long-tailed macaques, and the mosquito vectors are the anopheline mosquitoes. These anopheline mosquitoes are predominantly forest mosquitoes, okay? Right, okay, interestingly, the infection in the monkeys is asymptomatic. That means the monkeys do not show any clinical signs. They're happily jumping around, disturbing you, going into your kitchen, you know, and stealing your food. There's no clinical signs at all. Only when the infection comes to humans, then only the humans will get clinical signs of fever. Okay? So that is why they are very efficient reservoirs. Now, a very good parasite will not kill its host, right? If you are a parasite, will you kill your host? No, right? What happens when you kill your host? You will also die, isn't it? Yeah, because you are living in the host. So a very good parasite, like a malaria parasite, does not kill its primate host. Okay, they live almost like in symbiotic relationship. Okay, you're all familiar with the kera, right? The kera ekor panjang. You know that it's all over Southeast Asia. It's the most common primate, and that is why it is very dangerous because we have found that a very high percentage of these monkeys have got the zoonotic malaria. Okay, this is the distribution map of the long-tailed macaque. Okay, the kera in Southeast Asia in yellow. And you can see this overlaps very well with the risk of zoonotic malaria in the region. Okay, so these monkeys are the main reservoirs for the infection. Right, okay, interestingly, zoonotic malaria has been in Southeast Asia for a very long time. Okay, it is not something new, right? But unfortunately, in the past, it has been misdiagnosed for other species of Plasmodium. Okay, the reason is simple. Most of the trophozoites will look like Plasmodium falciparum, which is a human malaria. You've got the band forms, which are very similar to malariae. You've got the schizons, which are very similar to other species as well. And even the gametocytes, okay, resemble Plasmodium malariae. So if you're a microscopist, and if you're looking down the microscope, and you're looking at the blood film, chances are you will not detect Plasmodium knowledii. You need to do PCR. And once we have started doing PCR in Malaysia, we found that Plasmodium knowledii is the most common form of human malaria. Okay? So this is the prevalence in a few countries in Southeast Asia. Sarawak is the top. You know where Sarawak is? It's in Borneo, right? It's next to Kalimantan. Sarawak, 82% of the human malaria cases in Sarawak is due to zoonotic malaria. Okay? Then of course you've got Selangor in Peninsular Malaysia as well, with high percentage. Singapore, 13%. Indonesia is at about, what, 3.2%. Okay? But I'm sure that if you look hard enough, especially in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, and also in Java, you will find more monkeys infected with the parasite. Okay? So what we did in Malaysia is that we screened quite a number of monkeys to determine the prevalence. We used a molecular screening method, and we did some epidemiology. Okay, we looked at various habitat types in the country, and we found that these are all the spots where we sampled on the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, and we found that more than 90% of the monkeys are infected with Plasmodium. Okay, so this is extremely high. But for the zoonotic malaria, it is about 13%, okay, 13.5%. And of course, we need other species of Plasmodium as well. Now, very interestingly, you remember I mentioned about how habitat loss is forcing these monkeys out of the forest, and they're coming into agriculture, they're coming into suburban areas. what we have found now is that the highest prevalence of zoonotic malaria is among the monkeys which are in the agricultural areas. Okay, it's no more in the forest. Traditionally, zoonotic malaria was limited to the forest, but now the monkeys in the agricultural areas and the suburban areas like the kampongs, the villages, that is where the highest rates of infection are. Okay, so there's evidence that they are bringing the infection out from the forest into the town areas and into the villages. Okay, okay, this is just some statistics to show you that these are all the risk factors, zones, right. So we just want to focus on habitat. So the plantations and the orchards and the suburban areas are at higher risk of infection, okay, compared to the other habitats in the country. Right, okay, this is just some genotyping data. Very interestingly, I just want to point out to you that there is one major haplotype, okay, or one major genotype of zoonotic malaria, which is infecting most of the monkeys in the country. And as you can see, the blue is for the monkey infections and the red is for the human infections. So this same genotype is also the major genotype in humans, okay? And there are no human genotypes which are unique, which means that all the genotypes we find from humans have come from the monkeys. So this clearly shows that this infection is still a serious zoonosis, but the good news is that there is no human-to-human transmission. Okay, the main transmission is still monkey to human, which is good, because if there's human-to-human transmission, then the infection is just going to blow out of proportion. Okay, it's like a time bomb, right? So why is it that if this is such an important infection, why is it that most people are still not getting malaria, zoonotic malaria? What's the reason? The reason is the vectors, the anopheles mosquitoes, are still restricted to the forest. Okay, the mosquitoes are still in the forest. They have not come out to colonize the towns and the villages yet. But it's only a matter of time, just like the dengue virus, right? You know, the mosquitoes were once in the forest, now they have come up to the towns as well. So just a matter of time, these mosquitoes from the forest will come to the town, and then everybody will get malaria. Okay? And then parasitologists will have a lot of work to do, and we can get a lot of grants. Okay, this is just some simple data. Okay, this is some genetic data to show you that the infections are still common between the primates and the humans. Okay, right. So conclusion for this part is, I think I just want to say that we need to start off a surveillance program in the whole of Southeast Asia to get collaborators from all the countries to come together to look at the prevalence of zoonotic malaria in the monkeys, in the mosquitoes, as well as in the humans. Okay. So the next one I want to talk about is Sarcocystis. Sarcocystis is a tissue parasite. This parasite can invade your muscles and also your intestines. Okay. Due to the lack of time, I think I only got 5 minutes left, so I will be very quick with this. Okay. I just want to sum up the Sarcocystis infection. Okay. Basically, Sarcocystis can infect all kinds of animals. Humans, mammals, reptiles, birds, okay, you name it. And okay, let's see, right. So humans are very unique. Humans can be definitive hosts to this parasite, and they can also be the intermediate host, okay? Now, if you're a definitive host, the parasite will go to your intestine, okay, and you will get diarrhea, but the infection will subside after a couple of weeks. So sometimes when you get diarrhea, you think that it is salah makan or something, or you ate something which is not good. It could be Sarcocystis, okay? And then of course, it can also go to the muscles and you start getting muscle aches. So sometimes if you feel, oh, you got a body ache and all that, you think it's just, salah tidur or whatever. Actually, it could be Sarcocystis, okay? So please go and check. You know what, they have done a study in Malaysia on cadavers. You know cadavers? Cadavers, orang yang dah mati, ya? So they checked to see Sarcocystis. So they did section of the tongue, section of the diaphragm, and they found that over 30% of humans have got Sarcocystis, okay, in their muscles. But these are microscopic cysts, so you don't really feel the effect, especially in the tongue. A lot of people got Sarcocystis in the tongue, okay. So sometimes I tell my students, if I ask you a question and you cannot answer, go and check whether you got Sarcocystis in the tongue, okay. Right, so okay, some background. I just want to talk to you about two very important infections, okay? Now, Panko Island outbreak is the biggest outbreak so far in the world. Panko Island is off the peninsula of Malaysia, involving a lot of students and a lot of tourists, okay? And within a matter of weeks, they all got the infection and they came down with the symptoms. Tioman Island is on the east coast of Malaysia, also another major outbreak involving tourists from all over the globe. Okay, and when they went back, they all started developing muscular aches, and they went to the doctor. The doctor took a biopsy of the muscle, and they found the Sarcocystis parasite. Okay, so but we don't know what is the mode of transmission yet. The local people on the islands don't seem to get the infection, but the infection is very high among tourists. Okay. Right, so I'll just conclude now that zoonotic wildlife parasites is a major threat in Southeast Asia. I think we really need to get together and look at the infections in our animals as well as humans to know the actual prevalence. It's important that vets, medical people, zoologists come together to study these infections so that we can understand the epidemiology of the infection. And we are a hotspot for malaria and sarcocystis in the world, and therefore I think we should focus on these infections because it's got implications to the tourism industry. You know, when the Tioman Island and the Panko Island outbreaks occurred in Malaysia, for a few months we lost a lot of tourists, you know. It was a global thing, and tourists refused to come to Malaysia because they all didn't want to get sarcocystis on their tongue, okay? And we still don't know much about the biology of these parasites. You know, the basic prevention options are still not very clear. So I think a lot of research needs to be done. Looking at the agent, the host, the environment, and how all these factors interplay to influence the infections. And with that, I'd like to thank all my collaborators in various universities and my students. Of course, these are all a list of students in UPM. You know, as a lecturer, you just sit back and relax and get all the data. And the students are the ones who do all the work. So I would really like to thank them very much for all the effort in this study. And with that, I thank you very much. Please do contact me. My email address is there if you need further information on zoonotic infections in wild animals. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for very interesting presentation.